Hello, I'm John. Welcome back. So, got quite a few books to share with you today. These are books that I've been reading over the past 3 weeks or so. Um, the last time I made a wrap-up video, I had already read several more books by the time I actually made that video. So I'm quite behind. I actually have 9 books here that I'm going to talk about, and then I finished another one between the time of planning to make this video and making this video. So I'm going to try to squeeze that one in, maybe, but that may be too much. So we may just stick to these 9 books, and I'm not going to talk about any of them in depth really, because I didn't really feel like any of them need to be talked about in depth as far as my thoughts on them, even though I really enjoyed some of them. So I'm going to do the fiction first and then jump into the nonfiction. So there are 5 fiction and 4 nonfiction. So I'll just jump into this now. So on my quest to read more classics, I bought this, and this should have been part of my book haul. Several of these are books that I bought over the last month and a half or so. And so it was The Voyage of Argo by Apollonius of Rhodes. And this is Jason and the Argonauts and the quest for the Golden Fleece. And apparently this is the only complete version of that story that we have from ancient times. This was translated by E.V. Ryu, and I didn't care for this one very much. Like, I enjoyed it, and I liked parts of it, and I liked Jason as a character because, my only real experience with the Greeks so far has been Homer and, um, well, Homer, Aeschylus, and, oh, good Lord. Anyway, I can't remember the other writer. But, so this comes from a later time period than the other books that I read. And so the characters are more human, and the gods take a less prominent place in the story overall. They're in there, but they're not as um, they're not in the story as much as they are in, say, Homer. And Jason is a very human character. Jason is never referred to as godlike in the way that Hector or Achilles or that fellow I couldn't stand, um, the big king, and I never liked him. I still don't like him. I can't remember his name. But anyway, so Jason is a very human character, and he has doubts and fears and anxieties all throughout this. And they go on this quest to get the Golden Fleece. But my trouble with the book is, and I think this was a complaint lodged against Apollonius of Rhodes, it's not just a translation problem, but there is so much going on in this book. They'll go to a place, have an adventure, go to the next place, have an adventure, go to the next place, have an adventure. It's just bam, 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 bam. They went here, they saw this, they did this, and there's not very much description, so it's, like, I don't remember any exact examples from this. The one thing I really do remember is that as they're on the Argo and they're going through the sea, they come to the big rocks that are smashing into each other endlessly, and they have to send the dove through it. That's the only thing I really remember, other than that Hercules gets off the boat and wanders away to go save somebody, and I think, and they just leave without him. So I don't really remember a lot of this. They finally get to the kingdom where the Golden Fleece is, and Jason has to complete these trials, and he's helped by Medea, and then they run away together. And like I said, it just bam, 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 over and over and over. One thing happens and ABC, another thing happens, ABC, and I mean it happens over and over and over to the point where I just lost interest in it. And I know that's, look, I'm ignorant of the ancient Greeks. I read it for entertainment. I didn't read it to study it. I didn't read it to enhance my knowledge. I just read it to be entertained on a random day. And it was entertaining to a point, but mostly I just kind of felt disappointed by it. So that is The Voyage of Argo by Apollonius of Rhodes. So the next book I read, or the next fiction book that I read, was Black Ice by Matt Dickinson. This was okay also. I liked parts of it, I didn't like parts of it. So it takes place in Antarctica. There's a lady named Lauren Burgess, and she has all her life fought to be a scientist in Antarctica. It's her dream job. It's what she's always wanted. And she got together the idea to create this Antarctic base and drill down into a freshwater lake, or yes, an underground freshwater lake under Antarctica, to see what's living down in there. And it's taken all this time and all this effort, and she had to find all these donors. And so the fate of this whole expedition rests on drilling down into this lake and getting an uncontaminated sample. And then at the same time, there are two explorers, and one is a super egotist who is just a complete narcissist trying to walk across Antarctica from the widest points. And they run into trouble, and they are starving to death. And the other guy with him sets off a beacon, an emergency beacon, and a plane flies in from South America somewhere to come down and rescue them, and it wrecks. And so the team at this laboratory have to go down and save them, and it's a long way. It's like 300 or 400 miles. And when they get there, one guy is in really, really bad shape. There was a survivor from the plane, and he's in bad shape. But the narcissist explorer is in really reasonably good shape, And so they have to take these people back to the base. And the explorer is really, really annoying and obnoxious, and he wants his way all the time, no matter what. And he wants to go back out and do this trek without the other explorer. And meanwhile, one of the scientists who had gone down to see, the plane went down into like a crevasse, right? I'm not sure if that's how it's pronounced. That's how it's spelled. And he found that all the food on the plane had been eaten, but it's clear that this famous egotistical explorer is the one who ate it and didn't care if the other two died. So all this friction develops between them, and he wants to go back out on the ice and do this trek again, but they don't want to let him. And he's using up all their internet, and this is back 20 some odd years ago. So it cost a lot of money, satellite, and the explorer gets in an argument with Lauren, and he decides to steal their snowmobiles and take off back to where they were and do this trek again. But in the middle of this, they get in a big fight, and the base burns down. And basically, he has gotten so paranoid that he thinks they're trying to kill him, so he starts trying to kill them. And it's a race back to this wreck because they had left the emergency beacon there, and that's their only hope. Because their satellite, he had broken their satellite communications, and so nobody knows what's going on with them in the outside world. And it was okay. I really did enjoy this. It was a fast read. It was really entertaining. I probably didn't explain it very well. It's been 3 weeks or so since I've read this. Okay, so after that, I read Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. This was really good. It's about a girl named Mary Yellen, and this is in the reign of one of the Georges. I don't think we're ever told outright what year this is, so I think it was in the time of George III. So her mother dies. She lives with her mother at a farm, and her father had already died years before, and it had been years of backbreaking labor. Her mother dies, tells her, before she dies, tells her to sell the farm and go stay with her Aunt Patience. And so she sells her farm, her home, and moves off to live with her Aunt Patience, only she doesn't live where she used to live. She lives in Jamaica Inn in the middle of the moors. And so this is in southern England. And she is married to a man, I can't remember his name, Joss Merlin. And he is a foul character. He's a bad guy. And at first, so they live in the middle of nowhere, and all the people around there are afraid of Joss Merlin and afraid of Jamaica Inn. So there's nobody's stopping at Jamaica Inn, nobody's staying there, and they have these crazy parties every now and then. And so everybody wonders how he makes his money. And at first he's just a bully. Like, you just get the sense that he's just a bully, and you can't really figure out what's so bad about him. Like, why does everybody hate him so much? Like, yeah, he's a bad guy, he's a foul guy, he's a wife beater. I mean, he is a bad person. But at the same time, like when we first meet him, right, his wife is cooking bacon in a very heavy skillet. And I was thinking to myself, like, you've got a skillet full of hot oil and it's red hot. So why don't you just throw the oil in his face and beat him over the head with the skillet and then dump him in the. I mean, I was just thinking that because it's like, why are you living under this man's tyranny? I don't understand. I mean, there's nobody around, so it just seems like his power over her didn't really make sense at first, but as it goes on, some things come to light where he's involved in some really bad stuff, not just smuggling, but murders, and a lot of them. And I don't know how much I want to give away because this is a book worth reading. At the same time, he has a brother named Jim, and Mary is attracted to him. She doesn't want to be, and she doesn't want to admit it to herself. And they sort of have this romance going on where she thinks he's part of Joss's gang, and maybe he's the mastermind behind all this. And she has also met an albino preacher who she thinks is a good guy. But this is a Gothic novel, right? It's in the Gothic style, so you really don't know who to trust and who not to trust. But I will admit that I knew who the bad guy was immediately when we are introduced to him, like the real bad guy, the mastermind at the top of this. And I think it's probably pretty apparent to anybody who reads it. But it wasn't apparent to Mary Yellen at all. And so the whole time I was reading, I was thinking, like, come on, you can't be that dense. You know who the bad guy is. It's very clear who the bad guy is here. And of course, by the time she figures it out, it's too late. So it's a very atmospheric novel. It depends a lot on the setting and the weather and all that. It's very, very wordy. It's a little too wordy for me, really, but I enjoyed it, and it was a good book. And I'm going to read her book Rebecca one of these days too. But this was a little too much for me, honestly. Even though I enjoyed it, it was just too wordy, too atmospheric, and to me it was too obvious. So the next book I read was All That Remains by Patricia Cornwell. This is the third book in her Case Scarpetta series. Case Scarpetta is a medical examiner, and I have to say that I was kind of disappointed with this one. So I've also read Postmortem, and while I liked it, I liked the characters, I liked the setting, I liked the setup, the plot. I felt it wasn't quite executed as well as it could have been, and um, that's how I felt about this book. I felt like it had everything going for it. It just wasn't pulled off in the best way. So there is someone killing couples in Virginia, and this takes place in Richmond, I believe. I think so. And it's been a little while since I've read it, but one of the couples that goes missing is um, one of them is the daughter of the new drug czar of the U.S. So I can't remember the name of the agency she heads, but she's been appointed by the president, and her job is to, hunt down these drug gangs or whatever. And and so her daughter and her boyfriend go missing and are found dead. And Case Scarpetta is the medical examiner and has to go examine the bodies, as she's been examining all the bodies of these couple murders. And there is this, is it political? Like, is this targeting her mother? And at the same time, Case Scarpetta has a friend who is a reporter who was the sister of one of the murdered women in the first book, Postmortem. And she has moved from Richmond to Washington, where she works on the Washington Post. And she is working on a story about these murders, and she is convinced that the FBI is following her around, reading her emails, reading her mail, breaking into her apartment. So she thinks that the FBI is trying to cover up something serious going on here. But we don't know if that's what's actually going on, because she seems a little bit paranoid, a little bit off kilter. And so Case Scarpetta sometimes teams up with a detective, and she teams up with him, and they go to try to figure out what is going on. And I'm not going to talk too much about the rest of the plot because that would be giving it away. But I think this book suffered in a few ways. So first of all, it's told from the first person perspective. And I felt like that limited it in some ways. And Scarpetta is not present for a lot of the events that are going on. She's not present for finding the bodies. She isn't let in on what's going through the killer's mind. Like, we don't get any insight into him at all. And most of this book is talking. It's conversation and dialogue, and so we're really detached from what's going on, and I think that hurt it in a lot of ways. And at the same time, she's having this on again, off again relationship with an FBI agent. He's moved away, they've gotten in a fight or something, and he's moved to Colorado. And he comes back, and it really had nothing to do with the plot. It was just kind of like a romance thrown in just for the sake of it, and it wasn't necessary, and it didn't really add anything to the plot. And so that happened several times where she'll be going through these things, but they're very detached. They're not happening to her. They're things she's reporting to us. And I also didn't feel like, as a medical examiner, she would be present at all these times, and she would have this much involvement in field work. Like, I keep thinking about Quincy, right? Quincy M.E. I don't know if you've probably never seen or heard of that show. Quincy was always running around screaming that things were going wrong and people are going to get killed and nobody's listening to me. Nobody ever listened to Quincy. Quincy was always right. Anyway, so yeah, I think it suffered from that. I think a lot of the tension was broken from that first person detached narrative. And I also have to say that um, we never really learn why the guy is doing what he's doing. I mean, we get a little bit of, but it's dialogue. It's we're told that he's doing this for this reason, but this is all by profilers and things. We never actually really find out why he's doing it or what his thought process is. And I felt like the climax of the book was just kind of um, out of the blue and didn't really fit. And that's how I felt about the climax in Postmortem. And that detachment and that sudden out of the blue climax also happened in Postmortem and happened in this book. So I don't know if I'm going to read any more of the Case Carpetta novels. I like the characters. I like the plot. I like the basic idea of it. I just don't think it was pulled off as well as it could have been. So that is All That Remains by Patricia Cornwell. And the next book is one that, so Kevin Toll did a video about this book, and I thought maybe it would be the perfect book to read after All That Remains, because I felt like I didn't get what I wanted out of All That Remains. So I read The Bone Collector by Jeffery Deaver. This was fantastic. This was really, really good. And it has attention from the very beginning, and it does not end until the very end. It was just great. I mean, the dialogue doesn't ring hollow. The investigation really makes sense. So it focuses around two characters. Amelia Sachs, who is a patrol officer. It's her last day on the job. She's put in for a transfer to public relations, but she is called in because there's a dead body, and all that is visible of this body is down on some train tracks. This is in Manhattan. Is a hand sticking out of the gravel, and one of the fingers has been completely cleaned of all the flesh, and there's a ring stuck on the finger. And we already know that two people have been kidnapped from the airport. Like, they get in a cab, and the cab driver is the murderer, and he kidnaps them and takes them away. So we already know this has happened. And so we are along for the ride with both the people trying to solve the murder and the killer and the people, the victims. It's a very violent, sad. I mean, there's a lot of, we are let in on their thoughts, and like, it's very gruesome, and there were moments where I was questioning, like, man, we're skirting the edge of entertainment here. Like what is acceptable for entertainment. But on the other hand, like, doing that showed the brutality of this killer, of this, I mean, he's a monster. And so it's a Lincoln Rhymes novel, and Lincoln Rhymes is the main character, and he was basically like a really big crime scene investigator. He's not head of like CSI. It's called something else in this, but he was extremely proactive, and he gathered all these different sands and gravels, and he knows so much about fibers and wood grains and just everything you could imagine. But on his last case, he went into an unsafe building and a beam collapsed on him, and he was paralyzed. He's a quadriplegic. And it's been 3 years since that. But he's still the best. I mean, he's the absolute best. He literally wrote the book on all this. But he is in a state of despair. He can't stand it. He doesn't want to live anymore. And in fact, he's planning on ending his life. All he can move is, I think, his ring finger on his left hand, and his head and his shoulders. That's all he has control of. And so he just lies in bed all day long. Basically, he's basically given up. But they call him in. Some detectives come to his house and say, look, we want you in on this. We need your help because people keep going missing. And so he reluctantly agrees just for one day. And he really likes the way that Amelia handled the crime scene. And so he uses Amelia as his eyes and ears and hands on the ground. So he directs her from his apartment how to go about searching these crime scenes and how to deal with these crime scenes and everything while he's trying to figure this out. And the best way I can explain it is that Lincoln Rhymes is basically a quadriplegic Sherlock Holmes. And they have a lot in common. He's very, very smart, but he's been put into this very unfortunate position. And so as the book goes on, Amelia finds him very cold and cruel in a way because he's only concerned with the crime scene. He's not concerned with the victims or anything like that. He's just concerned with gathering information. But they start to have a respect for one another and everything. And one thing that stuck out is very 90s, this is from 97, I think, very 80s, 90s, is that at one point the FBI comes in and the police are like, this is our scene, we're in charge here, and the FBI is like, not anymore, you're not. And that's, well, that would happen in Die Hard, right? But I'm also thinking of like South Park, that South Park where the kids are playing detectives and the other kids show up dressed as the FBI agents. But it was really good, and it was a real insight into this awful thing going on. And so the killer is obsessed with a book about another serial killer from the early 1900s who did all these things, and he is doing these copycat killings. And that's as much as I'm going to say. I don't want to give away too much of this book because it's really worth reading. This is really, really good. Okay, so that's quite a bit of books, and this video is running on pretty long. So I'm going to stop it here, and I'm going to make a part 2 to this video. So part 1 will be all fiction, and part 2 will be all nonfiction. And I hope that you will join me for the nonfiction video. And I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.